the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the tenor of this conversation that we will have, dear listener and dear viewer, about Pittsburgh is going to be quite different. Because as I sit here now on Wednesday, August 6th, in the year of our Lord, 2025, I am dying to ask our excellent engineer, Jake Hassan, a question. A question that he can't answer because it will get all of us in trouble if the answer were yes. The question, Jake, will you please play Renegade? Because I am into the 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers. I am into Aaron Rodgers as the starting quarterback of the 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers. And I look at this Steelers roster, and I see a team. I see a group of 53 that not only can make the postseason, but I believe will make the postseason. And the Steelers quarterback's in the news today. Aaron Rodgers says he doesn't know if he's going to play against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the preseason opener. He says that he's willing to play in the preseason. And Rodgers, to his credit, he basically said, like, preseason football's not real football. Like, you're not going to gain anything from going out there, going up against vanilla defenses. But it's good procedurally. Like, get out there and call the play, break the huddle in time, run the play in time. For procedural stuff in a new offense with a new team, Rodgers is willing to play in the preseason, and I very much like to hear that from Aaron Rodgers. I doubt we'll see him this week. Maybe it's for a couple series in the team's second preseason game, but I think it's good that we're going to get Aaron Rodgers in his Steelers uniform prior to the opener, Sunday, September 7th, on the road at his previous team, the New York Jets. And just as an aside, and Femi and I will get into this a little later when we're doing quarterback depth charts in the preseason, Steelers' third-string quarterback, Will Howard, broke his hand, and he's going to be out for the entire preseason and should be back for the regular season. Obviously, he's going to be the third-string quarterback. Mason Rudolph is the backup. So it looks like, for the time being, the Steelers' preseason quarterbacks will be the aforementioned Mason Rudolph and one-time wild card weekend starter. This is actually a good trip. We should actually look this up. Like, how many teams right now in the NFL have a quarterback depth chart where 3 quarterbacks have all started playoff games? The Steelers are definitely one of them, because Mason Rudolph will be the one when Aaron Rodgers doesn't play. And with Will Howard out, former Miami Dolphin Skylar Thompson going to get work for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we'll talk about the Steelers as far as the preseason is concerned, likely without Rodgers against the Jaguars, without Will Howard. It looks like it'll be Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson. Now, as far as Aaron Rodgers goes, he has been the butt of jokes this training camp. And candidly, has been the butt of jokes with everybody for a long time. Rodgers has become, despite his obvious physical gifts, despite the fact that he is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, I think he's a top 7 quarterback in the history of the National Football League, despite the fact that he is electrifying to watch, aesthetically pleasing when the ball comes out of his head, explodes out of his hand, got the cannon arm, got the accuracy. People hate Aaron Rodgers. And I don't even think people love to hate Aaron Rodgers. I think people just hate Aaron Rodgers. And if it's your opinion, you the person watching, you the person listening, that you dislike Aaron Rodgers for whatever the reason, probably because of his political beliefs, because of his thoughts on vaccine, whatever it is, I'm not going to judge you for it. If you dislike Aaron Rodgers personally, if he turns you off with the way he conducts business, with the fact that he's one of the great divas of all time. Like, he basically watched Brett Favre be one of the greatest divas of all time for years in Green Bay and said, hold my beer. Like, Brett, you think you've got this diva routine down? I'm about to blow this ish out of the water. And Rodgers has done that in spectacular fashion. So I can understand the people out there that don't like Aaron Rodgers, and you have to acknowledge that if you don't like him, that bias against him, because you don't like him personally, might bleed into the way you view him on the field and view the 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers. Because when I see Aaron Rodgers, and I acknowledge that I'm biased towards him, I like Aaron Rodgers, I always have. When I see Aaron Rodgers, I see a quarterback last year that had absolutely no chance. And look, I'm the moron, and I don't know how many times I can say that. Like, I fell for it last year. I did a monologue last year, an open of the show last year, where I said the Jets have all the pieces in place to be a Super Bowl team. Just, can you trust the head coach and the offensive play caller, Bob Saleh and Nate Hackett? And I chose to ignore Robert Saleh, who's a great defensive coordinator, I think going to be great with San Francisco. I chose to ignore the fact that Robert Saleh was overmatched as a head coach. I chose to ignore that Nathaniel Hackett is one of the biggest jabronis in the history of National Football League coaching. He sucks. He's Rodgers' buddy, great. He's terrible. I chose to ignore it, and I was wrong. But Aaron Rodgers did not play poorly last year. Aaron Rodgers, untenable situation with the team that's absolutely falling apart, and I thought Rodgers played well at points last season. And obviously, like, it didn't go great, and maybe he was kind of fed up at points. I certainly understand that. But you can't look at that situation last year and then the situation this year and say that they're even remotely comparable. The Pittsburgh Steelers, and you can feel good or bad about Mike Tomlin at this point. It's been a while since they've had postseason success. You can say what you want about Tomlin. I mean, the guy is one of the most consistent winners in the history of the National Football League as far as coaching is concerned. Famously, obviously, has never had a season where the Steelers finished below 500. This is a stable organization. And if there were one organization in the league where you could say definitively, beyond a shadow of a doubt, an organization that could absorb everything that comes with Aaron Rodgers, the diva tendencies, all of it, throwing teammates under the bus, shooting daggers at teammates. If there was one organization that could absorb it and handle it and corral the stallion that is Aaron Rodgers, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Aaron Rodgers is set up for success. Now let's get away from Aaron Rodgers for a second, and let's talk about the rest of the Steelers team as I view them right now. I like this offensive line. Now, there are a bunch of publications, whether it's, Brandon Thorne, who does a great job for Establish the Run, or Pro Football Focus. I really respect PFF. I respect ETR. They do their offensive line rankings. And the Steelers, I think, are 21st in both of Thorne and PFF's offensive line rankings, which doesn't sound great. I am going to choose to be, and I think I'm going to be right about this, I am choosing to be optimistic about the Steelers' offensive line, which is ridiculously young, has got a top 5 center already in Zach Frazier, and has got 2 bookend tackles, right? Fatanu and Broderick Jones, who are both young, high draft capital, and both have enormous potential to be studs at the NFL level. And I've got a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers that absolutely knows what he's doing and is in firm command. I'm optimistic about the Steelers' offensive line. I like the 1-2 punch at running back with Caleb Johnson, the rookie, joining Jaylen Warren. Warren, obviously an adept pass catcher, an adept pass protector. Someone that can get the check down from Aaron Rodgers and make guys miss and be effective in that game. Caleb Johnson has got a ton of burst, way more explosion than Najee Harris, and showed that in the collegiate level at Iowa. I think this is going to be a good running back combination for Arthur Smith. The receivers are nothing to write home about, obviously. DK Metcalf is a stud, but outside of him, Stone Cold Calvin Austin, not great. Maybe Roman Wilson gets it together, and I like what Roman Wilson's been saying at training camp, and Aaron Rodgers addressed it today. Aaron Rodgers telling the news media in Pittsburgh that he's got to get Roman Wilson out of his head because Roman Wilson is too concerned with being a perfectionist, and Roman Wilson is too concerned about making Aaron Rodgers happy. I like that from Roman. You want that from your young players, to want to please the Hall of Famer and Aaron Rodgers, to be doing the right thing. And I think this represents a step up in leadership from Aaron Rodgers, that he's willing to shepherd a young player like this along. Roman Wilson's a guy that was good at Michigan and had a lot of people excited last year. A lost rookie season due to injury. Why can't Roman Wilson be average this year? Which would be a huge upgrade for the Steelers over what they've had at the receiver position outside of the number one last year, obviously, was George Pickens. We know Arthur Smith loves to use the tight ends. The Steelers have 4 good ones. Jonnu Smith comes over from Miami. Arthur Smith's binky, obviously, in Atlanta. Pat Freiermuth's a stud. Darnell Washington is bigger than most offensive linemen. And I think, just from reading the tea leaves, reading training camp reports, listening to people I respect, that Darnell Washington could be a breakout player this year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That when you get down by the goal line, he's taller and bigger and has a longer reach than everybody else. I love me some Darnell Washington. And I like Connor Hayward, Cam Hayward's brother. And we're going to get the opportunity every week to bet the Steelers tight end at the longest odds to score a touchdown. Hell yeah. I think that's going to be a profitable venture for us this season. Now, perhaps you want to reference training camp reports and say, well, the defense has been kicking the offense's ass. And by and large, that's been true at Steelers training camp. But consider what Mike Tomlin has said and consider what Aaron Rodgers has said. That defenses early on in training camp, and we see this in the regular season also, the defenses are generally farther along than offense at the start of things. And Rodgers has said the last 3 to 4 days have been different, and I think that is rubber stamped by the practice reports on Tuesday, yesterday, where Rodgers absolutely dominated and threw 3 touchdown passes against the Steelers defense. So I'm bullish on the Steelers offense entering the year. And as far as the defense is concerned, I love it. This defense has studs at all 3 levels. And not many defenses can say that. TJ Watt's headed for the Hall of Fame when it's all said and done. Jerry Dulac, who's been covering the Steelers forever, wrote in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that Steelers brass internally are thrilled with first-round rookie defensive lineman Derek Harmon and think he's going to be a beast immediately. Here's TJ Watt. Here's Cam Hayward. Here's Derek Harmon. Here's Alex Highsmith. Good luck to opposing offensive lines and opposing quarterbacks. I'm a huge fan of second-year linebacker Peyton Wilson. Do I have him in my Dynasty IDP leagues? You're damn right I do. Can you get a bounce-back year from Patrick Queen? Tough for him to be worse, to be fair. Probably going to be better this year. Going to be hard for him to be worse. I love the secondary. Darius Slay comes over. You got to love that. Jalen Ramsey comes over. You got to love that. Joey Porter Jr., Thornhill, Elliott. I don't even mind that Micah Fitzpatrick's now in Miami. I think the Steelers got better. And there's a conversation to be had about team building here, right? Where if you're a Steelers fan, maybe you look at what they've done this offseason and you go, oh my God, if this season ends, wild card weekend and a 10-point defeat, or they don't make the playoffs, like it's fair to say, like they're up against it. It's an old team that has clearly pushed the chips in for one run here this season. And I don't know what happens moving forward. They got to address the quarterback position at some point, obviously. But that is a conversation for another day. That is a conversation for Steelers blogs and Steelers message boards and for more traditional sports media. And I think it's a conversation worth having, and I do find it interesting. This is a betting show. And what we're here to talk about is the here and now. And the here and now is, I think this team is ready for its close-up. I think this team is ready for prime time. A really good head coach, Hall of Fame quarterback, a defense stacked with playmakers. And the betting market looks at this team and just goes, nah. Think about this time last year when everybody's making the case that the Steelers are going to go under 500 and the streak's going to end for Mike Tomlin. And ask yourself this question. Are the Steelers better this year or last year? Last year entered the season with Russell Wilson. We had 2 NFL teams this offseason, Pittsburgh and the Giants, both fall over themselves trying to sign Aaron Rodgers instead of Russell Wilson. The Steelers got Rodgers and the Giants got stuck with Russell Wilson. The NFL thinks Aaron Rodgers is better than Russell. Who cares what anybody else thinks? The league thinks Rodgers is better. The quarterback's better. The defense is better. I think Caleb Johnson's going to be better than Najee Harris. The offensive line, I think, has a ton of upside. Steelers are going to go over their win total. They're going to go over 500. The Steelers are going to make the playoffs at a plus price. And give me an exacta in the AFC North. Ravens 1, Steelers 2. Pittsburgh will be better than the Cincinnati Bengals this year. And I can't wait to watch Aaron Rodgers prove all of you wrong this season in Pittsburgh.